and welcome to episode number 25 of The Pitcher or the Hitter, the podcast by the M-SABR Dynasty League for the M-SABR Dynasty League. I am Cam.
I'm Sahil.
And we've got a quarter century of episodes under our belt. Well done to us. Thank you to everyone who's listening. And another really, really exciting week in the league. 2 barn burners to start out this season.
Yeah, Jesus. I thought week 1 was exciting, and it was. And then week 2 came around. It just, what a week. I'd also like to congratulate our podcast on now being able to rent a car.
That's right. Yes, got it. Where would our podcast drive if it could rent a car?
Oh, that's a good question.
Coors Field?
Coors Field. It's not a bad one. Anywhere but the Trop, I'd say.
Yeah, that's God. Erik Hosmer's house.
Erik Hosmer's house. Wherever Heriberto's playing.
Oof. But yeah, God, exciting week. But we'll start out with the one story that all of M-SABR has been talking about, and that is, of course, the chess channel in the M-SABR Slack. Andrew created a channel for chess, and a few of us started playing some games. I know it kind of died down after 2 days, but it was fun for a while, and maybe we'll get a tournament going.
It's still going on. I'm still playing a couple of you all in chess. I've been matched up with Erik right now. He beat me in the last game we played, and Andrew and I had an epic game where each of us played over 100 turns, and it ended in a draw, tragically. Yeah, hopefully we could get that started, because these fantasy leagues aren't enough. We need more. So
we do need more. Have you played? I haven't played either Yuki or Parker. Have you?
I have not. No.
Okay. So I was gonna do like a power rankings of the 7 of us, but I guess neither of us know how good either of them are. But I would say of the 5 people I have played, I would probably go you, Andrew, Erik, me, Greg.
I'll take that. When I study at nights, when I take breaks, I've just been playing a bunch of chess now. I'm just for whatever reason, just ridiculously addicted, because there's not much else to do other than study at night. So it's fun. Hopefully we get a good league started of chess.
That would be fun. But yeah, speaking of good leagues, let's dive right in to the matchups from last week. And there is one actual story that we did want to start off with, and that is Conor. God, Conor's team, the Off-White Sox. You picked him as your upset pick of the week, and it came true. A stunning 7-4-1 victory over the executive batting order, setting the single week record for ERA with a mark of 0.486 and a whip of 0.514. Just one of the most amazing things to watch in league history. Tremendous week overall. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, and it's funny because I look at the numbers you put up this week other than the ERA and whip, and they really don't jump out of the page that much. 30 runs, only 6 home runs. The 7 stolen bases are really nice, as were the 41 RBIs. But if you look at the rest of the pitching categories, 37 strikeouts, 3 quality starts, 2 saves, 1 hold. That's not particularly impressive, yet he was able to win 2 of those 4 categories. And I think that as great of a week that Conor had, this also strikes me as a little bit of mismanagement on EVO's end. EVO currently has 28 strikeouts as of the time that we are recording this. Craig Kimbrell is pitching into 9th here, so perhaps he could rack up another strikeout or 2. But you would think that with a 9 strikeout difference here, EVO could have probably added a starter or 2 to stream to beat Conor's strikeout number. And I know that usually you would be concerned with ERA and whip and wanting to keep that low if you were having that reliever strategy, but he already knew he was going to lose ERA and whip. There's no way you're going to beat Conor's numbers this week. I mean, these were literally the best numbers in league history. So instead, he loses strikeouts, he loses quality starts, he loses ERA, and he loses whip. And that's not a winning strategy for him. And even with the holds, they were tied for the league lead in holds last week. They only had 2 holds this week. So really the only category that worked for their strategy this week was saves. They had 6 saves. And that begs the question to me of, is this pitching strategy going to work every week? It worked last week, except for the fact that, Erik just had an insane ERA and whip, although I think EBO eventually came back to win that. But if EBO has one bad start or one or two bad relief appearances, it blows up the ERA and whip, and suddenly it makes it really hard for him to win some of these categories. So I don't know if it's time for EBO to like really pivot from the strategy. I think 2 weeks is way too early, but I wonder if Zane, needs to think a little more about the proper way to implement the strategy so that, he's winning more pitching categories in a week.
Yeah, I will say they have faced two just legendary pitching performances. And Conor did, he only started 3 pitchers this week, the same number as EBO. All 3 of them were quality starts, so well done. And of course, I mean, he got the Carlos Rodon near perfect game out of that. So obviously that's why the ERA and the whip are so low, just that one single performance. But if he saw EBO trying to stream strikeouts, Conor could have very easily put in the starters that he did have on his bench to try and get that back without hurting his ERA and whip. I think he would have responded appropriately.
Yeah, you see, I'm not 100% sure he would have done that, because I think he could have thought like, hey, I get guaranteed have the ERA and the whip. Let me just hold on to that. But I think you do bring up a good point there. It is possible he would have just responded by putting his starting pitchers in there. But even if you want to argue that, EBO has faced 2 teams that have put up like ridiculously good ERA and whip numbers, you still have to look at what their ERA was this week. They put up a 3.81 ERA, which was right in the middle of the pack. So, I mean, even if Conor had posted like a 3.6, 3.7 ERA this week, they wouldn't have beat that. And that's the type of ERA where if you're, using this reliever strategy that you have to beat, you pretty consistently need to have an ERA. And, I feel like the high 2s, low 3s is kind of that sweet spot for the strategy to work. So, again, it's 2 weeks. The strategy worked last week. I don't think it's like a huge issue, but I think this is just something to keep your eye on, that the strategy is not necessarily dependable on a week-to-week basis. There is some risk. So, but we'll see. Also, their offense needs to get it a little more together than they have been.
Yeah, that OBP as of Sunday, 318 on base percentage on the season. I know OBP has been down across the league, except for my team. And the Fighting Bellies of a 368 OBP. Goddamn. But otherwise, most teams have not gotten on base. So it's not super concerning, but it is one of the worst numbers in the league, and they are going to have to turn their offense around, because part of the reason behind going to this strategy was so that they could trade for just an absolute murderer's row of bats, and they haven't really pulled through quite yet.
No, and it's early, so I mean, obviously these bats are going to heat up. I'm not exactly worried, but if you take a dive into their upcoming schedule, I mean, they kind of have to figure this out quickly, because they play Ruthvik and Nick next week, and then they play you. And, they're 0-1-1 right now, so that's a game and a half out of first place. It's conceivable they could lose these next 2 matchups. I mean, you and Ruthvik are, playoff teams last year. You both were in the semifinals.
Both 2-0 to start this year.
Exactly. If they're 0-3-1, I mean, I get that they've had a rough start to a rough schedule to start out with, and it gets considerably easier, but that's going to be hard. If you can't beat these top teams in the league, you're not going to be able to, secure a bye or maybe even get a playoff spot. So just something to watch out for. It's 2 weeks, but I'd definitely be a little bit concerned if I was them.
Mm-hmm. I agree. They've had some rough hitting. Akil Baddoo went into a slump immediately after they called him up. They're in a little bit of trouble, but I think they'll be fine. But yeah, you don't want to fall 3-1, certainly. And speaking of that, another team that doesn't want to follow 3-1 is Erik. He lost 5-4-3 to the Deep Sea Devers this week. And that was a matchup that went right down to the wire. It was late Sunday night. It was 4-4-4, which is just a hilarious score. I don't believe that scoreline's ever happened, but it did end up Ruthvik flipped doubles and then pulled off a tie in runs to make it 5-4-3. And yeah, why don't you talk about the excitement from this matchup?
Yeah, I mean this. I thought this one was going to tie again, and you predicted they would tie on last week's episode, and you almost hit the nail on the head. It literally came down to an E.5 run in the Sunday night game, just for Ruthvik to tie in runs and then therefore take the lead. But Erik did a lot right this week. A little bit of a tough luck loser here. So 14 homers, 11 stolen bases, 46 RBIs, all very solid numbers. Again, speaking of teams with bad OBPs, the 294 OBP for Erik this week is not going to cut it. And unlike Zane and Max's team, it's not like, oh, some stars are slumping, like this is fine. It's Dylan Moore's a 136 average. It's, Leody Taveras has a 103 average. So I wonder if, Erik just needs to find, a couple of more dependable bats to put in the lineup and, not be gambling on some of these younger guys, if he really wants to, kind of get that OBP up and be a bit more consistent on offense. But I think that the other numbers were all great offensively. And then pitching wise, he did slump a bit with the ERA this week, but that was to be expected. He wasn't going to keep up last week's numbers. The one thing that interests me here is that he only had a combined one hold and save, actually, as did Ruthvik and Mick. And it's funny because when you think of an Erik team, you think of a team with a pretty solid bullpen, especially in holds. And it seems like Erik's been kind of going away from that strategy a bit this year. And I wonder if maybe putting a little more emphasis on that could be beneficial. I mean, I know the first week it really didn't make sense playing a team like, EBO, but like when you're playing a team like Ruthvik and Nick that doesn't put as much emphasis on holds relievers, I wonder if that would have been a better strategy this week, and that could have been the thing that would have handed him the win because of how close these categories are, and that category was tied.
Yeah, it was. If either of them could have gotten one save or one hold, that would have made a big difference. I do want to shout out Erik being just shy of the 100 strikeout mark, which is a big milestone in the league. He got 99. And Ruthvik, his pitching really held up this week. 7 quality starts, which I believe was the high for the week. And the low ERA, the low whip. Shout out to Shane Bieber having 24 strikeouts on his own. How many? He struck out, 13 Reds on Saturday, something like that.
Yeah, man. He's good.
Sunday. His Jacob deGrom only made one start, but he struck out 14. And then your favorite player, Matt Boyd, 2 tremendous starts, including one on Sunday that may have been the difference in whip.
Yeah, I do appreciate the home run he gave up to Sean Murphy, but otherwise he's looked really good to start the season. And again, Matt Boyd has had streaks like this before, and then he goes and struggles. So I'm not ready to hop on the Matt Boyd bandwagon or anything, and I don't think I ever will. But definitely a nice start for him for Ruthvik's team. Speaking of Ruthvik's team for a second, too, I was more impressed with them this week than I was with their performance last week. I mean, a 365 OBP was a lot better. I was on the record here last week saying, like, if that OBP doesn't get up, his offense isn't really going to go anywhere. And he got it up. The 40 RBIs wasn't bad. 5 stolen bases are decent. And he was able to, take a couple of those offensive categories. So, with his pitching, that's going to carry him every week, but he still needs to win a couple of these hitting categories every week. And if he can replicate what he did this week, I think he'll be fine most weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Great performance from him. Right, you ready to talk about the next matchup?
Yeah, which one do we want to jump to next?
Do you want to talk about mine?
Yeah, let's do that. This matchup actually ended up closer than I thought it would be. you won 7-4-1, but Andrew hung in there like all week, and it was pretty close until the end. And he did leave Ryan Yarbrough on his bench today, and I wonder if putting Yarbrough in there might have made a difference in whip and could have made this even more interesting, could have given him a couple more strikeouts. I'll let you talk more about this matchup here, because this was a good one.
God, yeah, this was a barn burner. Up until, I guess, late on Saturday, it looked like it could have gone either way. And even at times on Sunday, it did. I'm going to, first of all, start out by congratulating Andrew. He was unanimously picked to be the worst team in the league, and he has hung in there against two good teams. It wasn't my team and Ruthvik and Nick's team last week didn't even have off weeks. We played well. Andrew just played really well also. He was at one point in the week leading the league in both runs and RBIs. Just looking at the numbers, would have beaten like 9 teams and tied 2 others, or maybe would have beaten 8, tied 2, and then lost to me. So just overall a tremendous week from him. 17 doubles. He got 4 saves, very low whip. 45 runs was one of the higher totals for this week as well. And I'm gonna credit him for going out really aggressive out of the gate. He used all 8 of his acquisitions by the end of Thursday. I only used 2 for the entire week, so that was definitely kind of exciting seeing him shift his team around in hopes of winning, and he very nearly did. Kudos to him. And to talk about my team for a little bit, we talked a little bit about this off air, but we were in agreement that I have started out the season better than any other team. I'm off to the hottest start. I'm 2-0. I have by far the best on base percentage in the league. My pitching this week, I had a 1.76 ERA and a 0.95 whip. Just looking at some of my pitchers, Trevor Bauer, 2 tremendous starts, 0.69 ERA, almost like he did that on purpose. Chris Paddock had a decent start for the first time in a while. I got Walker Buehler, Hyunjin Ryu made a good start. Yu Darvish, 2 great starts. I'm doing everything I need to be doing right now, and I'm really looking forward to my matchup with Erik next week.
Yeah, I think your team is just absolutely killing it. I guess I'm not surprised. I picked your team to be one of the better teams this season, but it seems like everything is really rolling for you. Minimal players on the IL, which is really nice for you. Syndergaard, Eliezer Hernandez, and Andrelton Simmons are the only ones. It's just
I did have a little trouble last week. Soto missed the first few games, and Trent Grisham was out until last Sunday. So I did miss guys last week, but this week they're kind of back now.
Yeah. You have a lot better injury luck than me. We'll get into that one in a second. But your team just in all aspects is rolling, and this doesn't really surprise me. I think you have a good, solid core here, and I expect you to really keep it going. And the one nice thing you have now is that you're a game and a half up on EBO and Erik, and you get to play them the next 2 weeks, so you can really. I know it's really early to talk about seeding, but if we are thinking about who we think the potential playoff teams are, it would be really great for you to be able to get that advantage early on. And with how hot your team is playing, there's no reason you can't win those 2 matchups. So we'll see what happens. It'll be interesting to see if you kind of fall back to the middle with them, if they can kind of gain some ground on you, or if you can really just start running away with this.
Yeah, we'll see over the next 2 weeks. I got my first ever win over Andrew this week, so maybe I can do the same, get my first win over Erik. And Erik had his first ever loss to Ruthvik and Nick this week, so maybe he'll get his first ever loss to another team as well. And one thing before we move on, I just want to shout out Vlad Jr. is slashing 412, 524, 706 this season. He is a dude.
Man, yeah, he as soon as I saw the reports, he came to camp like 30, 40 pounds lighter. I kind of figured he'd have a better year than he did the last 2 years. I've been waiting for him to take this jump, and good for him for finally doing it. I do want to get back to Andrew's team quickly before we move on. Obviously, he's had this like really impressive start Do you think it's sustainable?
That's a good question. I don't really know. Looking at some of his top performers, Brian Reynolds has a 365 on base, so he's relied on him pretty heavily. Andres Jimenez is one of his higher on base percentages. He relied on how many 10 RBIs this week from Adam Duvall, and I think 7 of those were in one game. So it's a lot of when you sign up for Adam Duvall, I'm gonna get 1 or 2 multi home run 5 or 6 RBI games per month or two, and then a lot of cold stretches. So I don't necessarily think that a lot of his guys are going to keep it up, but it's going to be fun to watch. Maybe Brian Reynolds is having a breakout season. Maybe Travis Shaw is good again. We'll see. Only time will tell.
Yeah, I mean, I think his team might be a bit better this year than we thought it would be, but I don't necessarily think that like this is suddenly like a really elite team that realistically can make the playoffs. But good to see that Andrew's like actually putting up a fight and he's not just kind of conceding that things aren't going to work out for him. So happy to see that his matchups have been competitive. But let's move on here to the next matchup. Which one do we want to talk about next?
Yeah, do you want to talk about your matchup? This one was another one that was tied at one point on Sunday. Ended up going right down to the wire.
Yeah, it almost worked out for a second consecutive week that I would have needed a Freddie Freeman to come up with an RBI to break a tie on Sunday Night Baseball, which was just would have been a big coincidence. But it didn't end up needing to be that way thanks to a Sean Murphy home run off of Matt Boyd. I have 2 main points about my team, and I know I didn't talk a lot, but I'm going to keep it brief this week. It's my goal. Injuries are just killing me. I mean, I lost. So this week I played with several games or the full week without Christian Yelich, Fernando Tatis, Kevin Biggio, George Springer, J.D. Davis, Jose Altuve, Ketel Marte, Sonny Gray, Max Fried. Like it's nuts. It's like Tatis came back this week, and J.D. Davis came back this week, and Sonny Gray came back this week, and I was like excited. I was like, oh, finally my team's getting healthy. And then like Max Fried immediately replaces Gray, and Yelich immediately replaced Tatis, and Altuve replaced J.D. Davis. So it's just nuts. I mean, I'm happy that despite that I'm 2-0, and I like to think that once this team is a little healthier, it's going to reach its full potential. But definitely not happy with the start that my team has had this season, especially the pitching end. I thought my ERA might dip into the 3s before Kyle Hendricks blew up, but Patrick Corbin has just looked like a hot mess. Max Fried wasn't that great before he went on the IL his last 2 starts, and I wonder if maybe the hamstring injury had some effect. But and I have a couple bats that really need to heat up, but it's still early. I think that this team's going to get it together. They're going to get healthy. I'm going to get on a bit of a roll. I'm not too concerned, but it's definitely a bit frustrating to watch. And the only other point I'll make about my team is, we talk about EBO with their bullpen strategy, but I'm leading the league in holds somehow. I was tied for the league or for the lead last week with EBO, and then this week I ran away with the holds lead. I had 6. So be interesting to see if that's something that I can keep up with in addition to the rotation, maybe shaping up a bit better. And then quickly on the Fighting Bellies, I mean, good effort by them this week. They just came up short. Was really impressed by the offense. They're kind of some tough luck with their pitchers. I know Sandy Alcantara looked great through 6 yesterday. Had 6 shutout innings, and then gave up 4 runs in the 7th, lost a quality start. But their offense is sneaky good. And if the pitching can be a bit better, I mean, I think this team can also compete for a playoff spot.
Yeah, I'll talk on this a little bit. We'll start out with your team. That injury bug has just been brutal for you, absolutely. But you still, you're 2-0. You're off to a great start. Your pitching was great. 84 strikeouts and only 8 starts is just an absurd ratio.
Well, it's 11 because it doesn't count the 3 starts I had today.
Oh, yep, scratch that. But you got 84 strikeouts, which was one of the highest. The ERA was rather high, but luckily for you, the Fighting Bellies ERA was 5.40, thanks to a Tim Hill blow up and Mitch Keller and Lance McCullers just kind of both getting rocked as well. So you got a little lucky there, but I do want to congratulate the Fighting Bellies again for, 5 stolen bases was one of the better numbers. 43 runs was solid, and they're second in the league in on base percentage. That offense is good. Their offense is almost entirely Dodgers, so they're going to live and die with that team. And the Dodgers are 12-3, something like that. So things are going well for them. They are going to drop to 0-2, but they have fought pretty hard in both of their matchups.
Yeah, definitely kind of a tough luck loser here, but they'll definitely have some chances to pick up some wins moving forward. Although they have another tough one next week. They play Clayton and Jake, so let's see if they can eke out their first W against them.
Let's do it. Do you want to? We can talk about Clayton and Jake's matchup now since we mentioned them. They had a very handy win over Yuki this week. So they'll improve to 1-1. Yuki will fall to 1-1. This matchup was really never in contention. Even though they had just a 297 on base percentage, they got 45 runs, 39 RBIs, and they stole 8 bases, which I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, was the most of any team this week.
No, Erik had 11.
Erik had 11. My God, 11. That is absurd. The record appears to be 15 stolen bases. So Erik he's a little further off from the record than I would have thought, but 11 is still a ton. But yeah, they did take 5. Bo with the Flow took 5 out of 6 batting categories. They had 6 quality starts as well by using 11 of their 12 starts. And yeah, I think Yuki's team is in kind of rough shape, I would say.
Yeah, it's actually interesting because on the pitching side, they weren't all that far off in some of these categories. Yuki finished with 5 fewer strikeouts, 1 less hold. The whips weren't too far apart. The ERAs weren't too far apart, although that category did go into Yuki's favor. It was really the offense that was a difference here, where Clayton and Jake just kind of dominated Yuki there. 2 things I'll say about Clayton and Jake's team quickly. 1, a 297 OBP is not going to cut it. And it's interesting that they were able to put up like 45 runs, 8 stolen bases, all of that with just a 297 OBP. I expect that number to rise. I'm not that concerned about their low OBP, but definitely that needs to improve. The second thing is Strasburg did go in the IL. And I know that they gave up quite a bit this offseason to go get him. I believe it was Rhys Hoskins and some other pieces. And when I spoke to Jake last week, he was really high on Strasburg. They think they really, won that deal and he could be their ace. But and actually not only Strasburg, but Lance Lynn landed on the IL as well. So forgot about him. So that we'll see how that works for their pitching stuff. I know they put up 6 quality starts this week, but that number could take a hit, as could the strikeout numbers. If Strasburg or Lynn are in for extended absences, and especially in Strasburg's case, I've been saying this from the beginning. I don't trust him to stay healthy, and he's 33 now, I think, or 32.
32, I would say.
Yeah, 32. He turns 33 in July. I was never a fan of the contract the Nationals gave him, but
he earned it.
He earned it, but there's something about earning your contract and then actually giving the player that contract. He definitely earned every penny, but that doesn't mean you have to give it to him. And it's just kind of the sad thing, sad way to free agency works. You have to pay for what's expected, not what you've done in the past necessarily. So it helps you get more money, but that's not what you're paying for. You're not paying for that past performance to happen again. So we'll see what happens, but that's a huge hit for Clayton and Jake, their pitching staff.
I certainly think it is. they're gonna need to figure out how to get some strikeouts, get some quality starts on that team.
Yeah, one other thing too is they really need to figure out this like catcher, shortstop, and DH logjam. There's three DH eligible players and three shortstops. Now, the three DH eligible players is kind of an obvious why that doesn't work because they can only start two of them at a time. And having three shortstop only players is an issue if you have two DH only players because you don't have that util spot available. So I wonder if they're not totally maximizing their potential here, and maybe a couple trades need to be made that could help fill those holes in the rotation with some of these injuries that are occurring. But definitely something they need to figure out. So, but we'll see. I mean, overall, great start for them. I predicted they'd be a playoff team. They looked the part so far, despite kind of a tough luck loss week one. And let's see how they do against Daniel and Alex next week.
Yeah, I'll say so. And do you want to dive into the sixth and final matchup from this week?
Yeah, let's do it. That was Alex and Anthony. I think once again, this matchup was never really in doubt. Anthony's now 2-0. Solid ERA and whip numbers this week. The offensive numbers didn't exactly stand out, although I think the 21 doubles led the league.
They did. That's
yeah, but he did enough to hang on against Alex and Zach. And, despite losing Paxton and despite the Soroka setback, I mean, their pitching doesn't look that bad. I think with Alex and Zach, I think we all knew that they had, a bit to work on. Their starting pitchers are really good today. They only got one quality start, but a 2.08 ERA, 1.23 WHIP. I think he carried out momentum. Maybe it can, win next week. But I think we're starting to see a little bit, who's starting to separate themselves. And I don't know if Alex and Zach are looking like that top tier team that's going to return to the playoffs so far. I mean, I'd love to see them prove me wrong. Not next week because they play me, but it's definitely looking rough for them so far after an 0-2 start.
Yeah, I'll agree with that and do you one further and say that they have looked like the worst team in the league through 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'd say that. And I'd say Yuki has probably been the second worst team, but because they beat Alex and Zach the first week, I can't put Yuki lower than them. But yeah, definitely interesting to see, just like when you're looking at the standings, you have three of last year's playoff teams are 2-0, but one is 1-1, one is 0-1-1, and one of them is 0-2. And Erik, who I feel like we all consider is like still in that kind of that playoff team mode here, is 0-1-1. So definitely been a crazy 2 weeks matchup so far. So we'll see how this continues to play out. But definitely an interesting early look at the standings.
Yeah, I agree, and I'll give Anthony's team a little bit of credit where it is due. They are 2-0. Yeah, like we said, they led the league in doubles this week. I'm a little surprising. They led the league in steals week 1, but only had 3 this week. So kind of surprising there. Maybe they'll lead the league in a different category every week. Who knows? But overall, they just seem to have infinite starting pitchers. They got a great week out of JT Brubaker. 1 start, 8 strikeouts, no walks. Yeah, Trevor Rogers is someone I like too. They're just kind of chugging along to 2-0. Who do they face next week?
They face Yuki next week, so no reason this team can't be 3-0 in my opinion. Although I think the true test starts week 4, where they play Jake, then they play me, and then they play Ruthvik and Nick before a week against Andrew, and then they play EBO, and then they play you. It's like a 5 out of 6 weeks are just like against either last year's playoff teams or that's last year's semifinals plus Jake and Clayton, who we predict to be a playoff team. So, we'll see if he can match up against some of these tougher teams.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, was there anything else you wanted to talk about in regards to this week, or are you ready to talk about the one matchup in particular that we're excited for next week?
One thing I'll say is that before we jump into next week is I feel like a lot of the matchups this year have been closer than our last full season in 2019, where I felt like you would see some close matchups when the top teams played each other, but like generally, otherwise they were kind of blowouts. And it's refreshing to see that most of these matchups this week and last week came down to the wire. And it's not just kind of your traditional kind of teams who are, really just doing well. It's, we're seeing teams like Conor and Andrew, who didn't have as good records the first couple of seasons, really doing well. So really excited with how the season has started. And I think the league is as competitive as ever.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as a whole, the quality of play in the league is better than it's ever been, and it's only getting better.
Yeah, I'm scared in terms of defending my title with all this competition. But yeah, let's jump into next week here. And speaking of Andrew and Conor, I mean, I think that's the most interesting matchup next week. And it's funny, at the beginning of the season, you would have thought, all right, this might be the worst matchup of the week. You kind of have Andrew, who's probably the worst team in the league. And, you have Conor, who's like better, but maybe not ready to make that jump. Whereas you had like two big matchups, you are playing Ruthvik and
I'm playing Erik.
Or sorry, you're playing Erik and EBO is playing Ruthvik. But I want to talk about this Conor and Andrew matchup.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think objectively those other two matchups will have more playoff implications, but especially we've chosen Erik as the matchup to watch each of the first 2 weeks. We've talked plenty about his team. I'm just very, very curious to see how Conor and Andrew match up more than any other game this week. They both have really impressed me the first 2 weeks, despite having just one win between the two of them. And it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, Conor upset EBO, and I think there's no reason that he can't take this matchup, but I also think Andrew's played really well, and there's no reason to me that he also can't pull out a W. So I wouldn't be surprised either way how this one goes, and I think that there's a lot of potential on both sides here. So that's definitely one I'm keeping my eye on for this week. And I feel like we'll learn a lot more about both of these teams next week, maybe address some of the concerns that, I brought up while we were talking about this week's matchups is Andrew's team, is your performance sustainable? And for Conor's team, can he improve on some of the pedestrian numbers from this week that while he still won, some of the categories, he could have done a bit better in and probably needs to be able to win on a more consistent basis against a better team. So definitely something to keep an eye out on.
That's true. And Conor this week gets 2 starts from Lucas Giolito. So I'm thinking he could maybe have another ERA, obviously not as good as it was this week, although you never know, but he could put gaudy pitching rate stats together again. I'm excited.
Yeah. I'm really curious to see how it plays out. I mean, 2 starts by Giolito is going to be good. Hey, we'll see what happens. It's going to be a fun matchup. I'm definitely looking forward to keeping tabs on it.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Looking to this week as a whole, you ready to go ahead and pick which teams we think are going to win their week 3 matchups?
This past week, I correctly predicted 5 of the 6 matchups. The only matchup that I was incorrect on was I picked EBO to beat Conor, although I did mention him as Conor's an upset special. Cam went 4-1-1, so he picked Ruthvik and Nick and Erik to tie, which almost came true. He almost really just hit the nail on the head there, but he didn't quite. So we're saying when you pick a tie and the matchup doesn't end in a tie, you get a tie in the standings. So I am 9-2-1 over the first 2 weeks, and Cam is 7-2-3.
All right. Yeah, plenty of time for me to catch up with you and take this, which is really the most prestigious award of the season. I care about this more than I care about winning the actual league.
Obviously. Who needs a big trophy?
It is a big trophy.
It's very big. All right, so here are my picks. I will be picking myself to beat Alex and Zach. I will be picking Anthony to beat Yuki. I will be picking Conor to beat Andrew. And these next three matchups are tough. I mean, I don't really know who to pick. I feel like, oh man, I think you're going to beat Erik. Your team kind of just feels like it's on a roll right now, and I don't really want to pick against you. But I am going to pick EBO to beat Ruthvik. I think that they're going to get back on track this week. I think that the bullpen's going to be better, and I actually think that EBO matches up well against a Ruthvik because Ruthvik's big thing is pitching or starting pitching and maintaining a low ERA and WHIP. But if EBO can match him with the ERA and WHIP, and if he could take saves and holds, which I don't think would be too hard to do, suddenly it becomes a battle of the offenses. And despite their slumps, that still take EBO's offense over Ruthvik's offense. So I'll pick EBO there. And then my upset special of the week is one I'm actually going to pick this week. I'm going to pick Daniel and Alex to beat Clayton and Jake.
Wow, that is surprising. Clayton and Jake have looked really good to start the year.
Yeah, I might actually regret this, but I don't know. It's just, there's always, it's just like this week when Conor beat Zane, I called it my upset special, but I didn't pick it as the upset special. And I feel like one of these weeks I just need to pick it. And, Daniel and Alex look pretty good offensively. And Clayton and Jake are dealing with some injuries on the pitch again. So, maybe they could sneak one out here.
Yeah. Getting bold, I see. I love to hear it. We are the People's Podcast, and the people like big upsets.
They do.
Okay. So my picks, I'm going to pick myself to beat Erik because could you imagine the backlash if I didn't pick myself to beat Erik after everything I've said all offseason?
Yeah.
This is our first matchup as rivals. This is we haven't really mentioned that yet, but it is. I am looking forward to hopefully beating him. I am going to pick Clayton and Jake to beat Daniel and Alex. I'm going to pick Anthony to beat Yuki. I'm going to pick you to beat Alex and Zach. I'm going to pick Conor to beat Andrew. I'm a little on the fence about it. And you know what? I've picked a tie in each of the first 2 weeks. I'm gonna do it again. I'm going to say that EBO and the Deep Sea Devers are going to tie. EBO will, I guess, improve to 0-1-2, and Ruthvik and Nick will be 2-0-1. I guess it's kind of a cop-out to pick ties. And if I had to pick a team to win, I would probably pick the EBO, but tie is my final answer.
Well, I mean, it's not a bad pick considering that, like, it's already happened once, and a lot of these matchups have looked like at times that they could end in ties. So definitely not a bad pick to say that they're going to end in a tie. And yeah, it's nice to see that we have a little bit of differentiation this week. We'll see if you picking Clayton and Jake and me picking Daniel and Alex, we'll see which one of us, kind of gets that right. But I guess I already said it. My upset special of the week is Daniel and Alex over Clayton and Jake. I just think with their injuries to the pitching staff and guys like Yordan Alvarez are still sitting out with COVID, I wonder if Daniel and Alex can take advantage of that. But yeah, anything else you want to add here, Cam?
No, I've talked about everything that I wanted to talk about this week. Yeah, excited for week 3. This is going to be, three matchups that, well, I guess 2 that are going to very directly affect the playoff race, a third that's going to be a lot of fun. And then, the other 3 are going to be great as well. Who knows?
Yeah, no, I'm definitely excited to see how these all play out, and excited to see it.
Well, yeah, that'll conclude our episode this week. Let's oh God. Do you want to do it?
Yeah.
I was gonna tie in with the rental car thing somehow, but I couldn't figure a good way to do it.
I wish there was something cool you could do when you're 26.
Yeah.
But all right. Well, that's going to be it for this week. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week when we let you know where the podcast went after it rented a car and see where it's rode.
True. Hopefully somewhere to celebrate its 26th birthday, anniversary, whatever podcasts do to celebrate that big day.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. Take care.
Take care.